The whole philosophy of happiness and unhappiness therefore hinges on the question of forgetfulness of some kind or another, and of remembrance of some kind or another. Remembrance is an attachment of the mind to a particular idea, person, thing, or place, and forgetfulness is its opposite. Once it is understood that remembrance causes pain, it follows that the only cure is some kind of forgetfulness. And this forgetfulness may be either positive or negative. The positive forgetfulness is one in which the mind remains aware of external stimuli, but refuses to react to them. The negative forgetfulness is either mere unconsciousness, a stopping of the mind as in sound sleep, or an acceleration of it as in madness, which has been defined as a way of avoiding the memory of suffering. Either sleep or madness may be artificially induced in various degrees by the use of intoxicants or drugs, but this also is a negative way of overcoming remembrance. Positive forgetfulness then is the cure, and its steady cultivation develops in man that balance of mind which enables him to express such noble traits as charity, forgiveness, tolerance, selflessness, and service to others. One who is not equipped with this positive forgetfulness becomes a barometer of his surroundings. His poise is disturbed by the slightest whisper of praise or flattery, and by the faintest suggestion of slander or criticism. His mind is like a slender reed, swayed by the lightest breeze of emotion. Such a man is perpetually at war with himself and knows no peace. And the exercise of this positive forgetfulness not only is non-reaction to adverse circumstances essential, but also non-reaction to favorable and pleasurable circumstances. Of these two, the latter is the harder and is less than described, and is less often described, although it matters just as much. Positive forgetfulness, although it lies at the very root of happiness, is by no means easy to acquire. Once a man attains this state of mind, however, he rises above pain and pleasure. He is master of himself. This forgetfulness, to be fully effective for the spiritual life, must become permanent, and such permanence is only acquired through constant practice during many lifetimes. Some people, as a result of efforts towards forgetfulness in past lives, get spontaneous and temporary flashes of it in a later life. And it is such people who give to the world the best in poetry, art, and philosophy, and who make the greatest discoveries in science. In such moments of true forgetfulness, there is a mental detachment from all material surroundings, in which the poet allows his imagination to soar. An artist, when he gives form to an ideal in which he completely forgets himself and all irrelevant surroundings, creates a masterpiece. The best of philosophy is uttered when a man surveys the problem of life without reference to the ups and downs of his purely personal circumstances. And some of the greatest scientific discoveries have been made in this same frame of mind. Such manifestations of genuine spontaneity, of forgetfulness, are very rare indeed. And although it is said that poets, artists, and philosophers are born and not made, these fleeting phases of real forgetfulness are the result of efforts made in past lives. In an attempt to make life bearable, some people develop a feeble kind of stoicism, a sort of who cares anyway outlook, and others plunge recklessly into Epicureanism. The former is apathetic acceptance of defeat, and the latter, the effort to forget defeat in the arms of pleasure. Neither is true forgetfulness, but when a man acquires the true forgetfulness, he enters the spiritual kingdom and passes through different degrees of forgetfulness until the goal is reached. Mayor Baba tells us, forgetfulness of the world makes one a pilgrim. Rav Satak. Forgetfulness of the next world makes one a saint. Forgetfulness of self means realization, and forgetfulness of forgetfulness is perfection. 3. The first plane, 42. Hafez evidently refers to the first plane when he says, Mahu.
کس ندانست که منزلگه مقصود کجاست. اینقدر هست که بانگ جرسی می آید.
In English, it is not known where the real abode of the divine beloved is. Only this much is clear, that I hear the sound of bells from the traveling caravans. On this subject of sound and the planes, Meher Baba says, however, I know this, that sound exists throughout all the 7 planes, differing in its expression of feeling, ecstasy, and bliss. Should I do the asterisk or wait?
Sure.
Questions Baba answers. Meher Baba Journal, Volume 1, Number 3. However, know this, that sound exists throughout all the 7 planes, differing in its expression of feeling, ecstasy, and bliss. The sound, sight, or smell of the higher planes can, with no stretch of the imagination, be likened to what we are used to on the physical plane. Our physical organs of hearing, seeing, and smelling are useless for experiencing and enjoying the higher planes. Therein, it is a different eye that sees, a different ear that hears, and a different nose that smells. You know already that there are inner senses, counterparts of the external senses in man, and it is with the former that one experiences the higher planes. Avoid the mistake of likening the sound of the higher planes to something different in intensity and frequency of vibrations to the sound of the physical plane. Know it for certainty that there is actually what may be called sound in the first 3 planes. The form, beauty, music, and bliss of this sound are beyond description. The nod or celestial music is peculiar to the first plane, which Hafez refers to as Bang Jurasl, the ringing of bells.
Thanks, Ernie. Marian.
Six, the stage between the 3rd and 4th planes. As stated above, although there is sound in all the 7 planes, it is smell that is peculiar to the 2nd and 3rd planes, while sight belongs to the 5th and 6th planes. The 7th plane stands unique. Here the sound, sight, and smell are divine in essence and have no comparison to those emanating from the lower planes. In this plane, one does not hear, smell, or see, but one becomes sound, smell, and sight simultaneously and is divinely conscious of it. 4, the second plane, 43, Hafiz evidently refers to the second plane when he says, Siguyamat kibiyamaka nith dushmat Musto karab sarushi I alami gebam zi muz diha dadast. In English, how should I reveal to you that last night in the tavern, intoxicated and unsteady as I was, great good tidings were brought to me by the angel of the hidden world. 5, the third plane, 43, Hafiz refers to the third plane in the following words. Would you like to read that, Mahu? You're so good at that. Sira. Or I could read it. Sira mizna nad in move ribi mukam shinas kidarmiyani gazal kul iashina avard. In English, what perturbation and distress this musician with knowledge of spiritual states and stages is causing the listeners, lovers, by interpolating in the midst of his performance the words of the divine beloved. 6, the stage between the third and fourth planes, 44. The journey between the third and fourth planes is at once difficult and dangerous because between these two planes, there is the point of enchantment, Mukam Iharat. It is very difficult to pass out of this state of enchantment if the pilgrim once stops there. Although most pilgrims pass directly from the third to the fourth plane. Unless the pilgrim gets out of this state quickly and proceeds onwards to the fourth plane, his progress will be held up indefinitely. Once a pilgrim becomes thus enchanted, he remains so for days, months, or years together. He can neither make further progress, nor can he retrogress. He is neither gross conscious nor subtle conscious. Neither can he be called unconscious, because he is fully conscious of the enchantment. And it is because of this consciousness of the enchantment that he lives this living death. The physical condition of the deeply enchanted pilgrim is no less strange. For if he seats himself in a particular position, he remains in that position for months or years together. Similarly, if he becomes enchanted while standing, he will continue standing until the enchantment ends. In short, he remains stationary in the position in which he first becomes enchanted. And although he may appear to be a lifeless statue, he is in fact more alive than the ordinary man of the world. It is well known to the Sufi world how Ali Ahmed Sabir of Piran Kalyar, who afterwards became a perfect master, once remained standing for years near a certain tree. During this period, Sabir's mind was absorbed in the enchantment of this Mukami Herat, and he was delivered from it by a kutub. Only natural death or divine help from a living master can help such a dazed pilgrim out of his spiritual stalemate. A master would help such a pilgrim either by bringing him back to the third plane or by pushing him onwards. Hafiz no doubt thinks of this stage of the pilgrim when he says,
let me read it.
yes,
مستم کن آن چنان که ندانم ز بیک بودی در آرسیا یه خیال کی آمد خودم رفت.
thank you. And in English, make me so dazed and intoxicated that on account of this state of forgetfulness, I should be oblivious of what came into my mind and of what passed out of it. Meher Baba explains that a pilgrim runs the risk of entering Mukamhi Harat, state of enchantment, when he passes from the third to the fourth plane. There are, he says, states of enchantment on other parts of the path also. But the most important is that between the third and the fourth planes. This Hariyat enchantment may be strong or feeble. If there is no hitch or disturbing factor present at the moment that a pilgrim becomes enchanted, then the Hariyat is deep or strong. If there is a disturbing factor present at that moment, then the Hariyat is feeble. If a pilgrim experiences either strong or feeble Hariyat between the third and fourth planes, and is then pushed forward by accident to a higher plane, he invariably goes to a position between the fifth and sixth planes, again with the same strong or feeble Hariyat. However, such instances are very rare. Ali Ahmed Sabir of Kalyar and Baba Abdur Rahman of Bombay both were precipitated from a very strong Hariyat between the third and fourth planes into a very strong Hariyat between the fifth and sixth planes, the former by a gift of grace from a kutub, and the latter through God's gift in the shape of an accident. A complete fixity of posture that lasts until death or until a perfect master is contacted is seen only in those pilgrims who have a very strong Hariyat. A must, God intoxicated, who has been with Meher Baba for many years, was in this Mukami Harat between the third and fourth planes when he was brought to Meher Baba in Rahuri in 1936. But his Hariyat was feeble, and although he would stand for many hours at a stretch in one position, this position would not be maintained permanently. The enchantment of Ali Ahmed Sabir, however, was a strong one, and he remained in one posture until he was finally delivered from the enchantment by a kutub. This state of enchantment should on no account be confused with the catatonic stupor of a schizophrenic, although it may appear similar. Both are states of enchantment, but they are poles apart.
Thanks, Marian. Mahu.
Pilgrim of the mental sphere. Meher Baba says that if a pilgrim of the mental sphere is in India and conceives the idea of seeing America simultaneous with the wish on his part either mentally or physically, as he wishes, he will be there. One may ask how he travels as fast as thought itself. The answer is that the mind is everywhere, and therefore the pilgrim of the mental sphere does not have to travel. He can be anywhere he likes without using his gross or subtle organs. He can know anything and everything about the gross, subtle, and mental spheres as far as the sixth plane, simply by willing to know. More important still, he can help less advanced souls and also ordinary human beings to come up to his own level of progress. When he wants to help anyone directly, the pilgrim of the fifth plane can lead an aspirant by the hand along the path. When he does so, the aspirant himself also perceives internally the continual presence of the master of the mental plane, known to Sufi as Wali, and also feels himself being actually led by him along the path to perfection. Hafiz in the following couplet evidently visualizes the particular sensation of one who's being led in this way. Okay. تو دست گو شوای کیا را پی خجسته که من پیاده می روم و همراهان سوارانند. Oh, august master, lead me by the hand because I am traversing the path on foot, helplessly, as compared with other companions who are riding along it. Generally, however, a Wali Mahapurush helps an aspirant by gazing into his eyes, thereby tearing away the inner veil from the real I within. This spiritual influence of the Wali through sight is known to Sufis as tawajjuh. The term tawajjuh does not apply to perfect masters. In their case, the term will is correct, for they can also render this help without the physical contact that is necessary in the case of masters of the planes. Meher Baba explains that on the fifth plane, the pilgrim sometimes desires to have the divine presence and sometimes attends to worldly duties. In fact, so far as divine presence on the fifth plane is concerned, God is always present, but the pilgrim may not always desire this presence when he turns his attention to worldly duties. On the sixth plane, the pilgrim persists in desiring the presence of God, 100%. Hafiz evidently refers to his experience of the fifth plane when he says, "Hurya ger همه احوالی از او غیب مشو حافظ." O Hafiz, if you desire the divine presence, then do not allow yourself to be absent. Now, the sixth plane. The traveler who succeeds in reaching this plane is entitled to be called a pir or Satpurush. There is no adequate translation of these words in English. The word saint would perhaps do, but it suffers from the handicap of very loose usage. Hafiz remembers this sixth plane in the following words. ما در پیاله عکس رخ یار دیده ایم ای بی خبر ز لطف شرب مدام ما. We have seen the face of the beloved reflected in the cup of our mind or heart. O ignorant one, no notion have you of the bliss that we imbibe therefrom. Gnosis of the sixth plane. Concerning the gnosis of the sixth plane, Meher Baba tells us, only God exists, and if anyone exists due to ignorance, its reality is illusory. It then exists as God's shadow, which means that God is both in the stage of knowledge and ignorance. The following four angles of the one experience, written in the language of Sufi gnosis, are different aspects of gnosis of souls in the sixth plane when they are face to face with God, but still in the domain of duality. All of these aspects are experienced together at the same time. Number one, همه اوست. This means everything is he. And for one who experiences this gnosis, only God exists. Two, همه از اوست. This means everything is from him. And for one who experiences this gnosis, all phenomena, diversities, and manyness exist as illusion when ignorance prevails. Three, همه با اوست. This means everything is with him. And for one who experiences this gnosis, God is both attributeless and with attributes. His attributes are unlimited when knowledge prevails, and limited when ignorance prevails. Body, mind, and the three worlds do not exist. But if they seem to exist, they exist as shadows. 4. همه در اوست. This means everything is in him. And for one experiencing this gnosis, even ignorance has no reality in itself. Its existence, when expressed, comes out of God's unconscious and infinite knowledge. And so, whatever exists in duality due to ignorance has come out of God, where it everlastingly existed.
Thanks, Mahu. I'll take a turn now. Supplement 10, the seventh plane, referring back to page 52. It should be understood that at the moment of being merged into the seventh plane, all links with the gross, subtle, and mental bodies and with the universe are necessarily snapped. In ordinary gross existence, there is no parallel to this snapping of these long, enduring, vital connections that bind the individual to his three bodies and to the universe. Physical death is, by comparison, an insignificant thing, almost as significant as the snapping of a piece of string. Ordinarily, at the instant of death, the subtle body and vital force are separated completely from the gross body. But the mind maintains the connection with the gross body for the first 4 days after death, and to a slighter degree, for 7 days more after that. In the final annihilation, Fana, however, the separation is not between body and mind. It is the actual annihilation of mind and of all Nukush Iamal, sanskaras. Supplement 11, different types of miracles, referring back to page 67. Meher Baba has given us an explanation of the difference between the miracles of 1, a savior or avatar, 2, a perfect master or sadguru, 3, a peer and a wali, that is, one on the 6th or 5th plane, respectively, and 4, those on the lower planes, that is, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. In connection with these 4 types, Meher Baba tells us, 1, the miracles of a savior are of a universal character and are performed when universally necessary. When a savior intends working a miracle, he stations himself for the time being on the 6th, 5th, or 4th plane as demanded by circumstances. When, however, it is desired that the miracles be very forceful, he stations himself for the time being on the 4th plane. 2, the miracles of a perfect master are on a very large scale, but they do not cover the whole universe. Like the Savior's miracles, however, they are wrought solely for the spiritual awakening of others. Like the Savior also, the perfect master who intends working a miracle stations himself on the 6th, 5th, or 4th plane for the time being, and for a very forceful miracle, he stations himself for the time being on the 4th plane. No miracles are ever wrought by the Majzub-e-Kamil of the seventh plane, for the simple reason that the three spheres, the mental, subtle, and gross, do not exist for such a soul. 3. The miracles of a peer or wali are on a limited scale. In fact, they perform no miracles directly. However, such miracles as can be attributed to them are wrought from their mental influence over the thoughts and feelings of others, yielding both spiritual and material benefits. They do not come down to the fourth plane, the plane of almighty spiritual powers. 4. Pilgrims of the first, second, and third planes can use or demonstrate powers from their own plane, such as reading the minds of others, producing things from nowhere, reciting words or passages from a book without seeing it, stopping trains, allowing themselves to be buried alive for hours together, levitation, etc., etc. These are actual powers acquired by the pilgrim on the different planes, and as such, cannot be called mere jugglery. Perfect masters and the avatar can snatch away a pilgrim's ability to use the powers from the lower planes, viz. First, second, and third, and can even snatch away the almighty powers of one on the fourth plane. Such a snatching away of powers of those on the lower planes is known to the Sufis as Salb-e-Wilayat. On the fourth plane are stored all the almighty powers. One on the fourth plane is known as a Mahayogi, a great yogi. On the fourth plane are stored all the almighty powers, which, if misused by the pilgrim, result in his utter ruin. But such miracles do not affect the world adversely, because the Kutub-e-Irshad, the head of the spiritual hierarchy of the age, takes care to make these actions ineffective. Meher Baba further explains that the indiscriminate display of powers by a pilgrim of the first three planes is fraught with serious dangers, but that one who misuses the powers of the fourth plane invariably falls back to the lowest phase of evolution, the stone state. Kabir has referred to these dangers when he says, Mahu? Is that Farsi or Arabic?
No, that's combined. Oh, no,
Oh,
that's Urdu. Kabir, yeah, Kabir.
oh,
Just read it like Latin.
okay. Sahiba Kagara Dura Hai Jaisi Lambi Kajura Karhe So Kakhe Prema Raza Gire kakanakur.
Mm.
Translated into English, the Lord's house is high, like the top of the tallest date palm. If he climbs it, he tastes the nectar of love. If he falls, he breaks his neck. Marian, could you continue, please?
Breaks his neck. The miracles wrought by saviors and perfect masters have a divine motive behind them and may be either voluntary or involuntary. The voluntary miracles of a savior or perfect master are those that he deliberately performs by the expression and force of his will. And the involuntary ones are those that occur independently of the will of the savior or perfect master and are wrought by the means of the ever-active force that surrounds these great beings. In the latter type of miracle, the savior or perfect master is unaware of the incidence of the miracle of which he himself is the source and prime cause. Both voluntary and involuntary miracles of these perfect ones are nevertheless always directed towards the spiritual awakening of the world. Why do saviors and perfect masters perform miracles? Very worldly people are spiritually obtuse, and they sometimes need miracles to save themselves or other quite innocent people from the results of this insensitivity. The following analogy shows what is meant thereby. Let us suppose that a child is holding a sparrow in his hand and is so careless. Let me start that over. Let us suppose that a child is holding a sparrow in his hand and in so careless a way that he is on the point of strangling it. In order to save the sparrow's life, it would be inadvisable to try to snatch the bird from the child's hand, for the child would probably tighten his grip on the sparrow and so kill it. But if the child is offered a coin, he will almost certainly relax his hold on the sparrow and so release it. The child is thus prevented from killing the bird out of sheer ignorance of what he is doing. The miracles of a perfect master accomplish the same sort of thing. They prevent people from doing themselves and others harm out of sheer ignorance of spiritual values. If gold is defined to represent miracles, a yogi of the lower planes dazzles worldly people by dangling this gold in front of their eyes, so that they are astounded by his prowess. Should they surrender themselves to such a yogi, they will ultimately suffer a cruel disillusionment. But when the savior or a perfect master dangles this gold in front of the eyes of worldly people, he uses one form of Maya to drag them away from other and more binding forms of Maya, and so draws them towards the path that leads to their true destiny, self-realization. Let us take another illustration and imagine a man with monochromatic vision, to whom the world appears blue, for example. His eyes thus act like blue spectacles, so that when he looks through them, everything seems to be blue. Spiritually speaking, The world is illusion and so has no color at all. It is colorless. A yogi demonstrating his miraculous powers merely replaces this man's blue spectacles by green or red ones, so that he sees everything as green or red. To his ignorant eyes, accustomed to seeing the world blue, this sudden change to green or red is astounding and reflects great apparent credit on the yogi. A perfect master, knowing that neither blue nor red nor green is the true color, but that everything is colorless, that is, nothing, wastes no time in changing spectacles, thereby enabling the man to see the world as it really is, colorless or nothing. The yogi and those lesser masters who are not perfect merely replace one illusion by another. But a perfect master permanently tears away the veil of all illusion and reveals the truth that creation is imaginary and that God alone is real. This working of the perfect master is a slow and painful process that lacks the colorfulness of the yogi's spectacular and misleading method. And it is for this reason that the working of the perfect masters is unfathomable. Who owns the powers by which miracles are wrought? The miraculous powers of a perfect master appear the same as those of a yogi of the fourth plane. But there is this important difference, that the powers of a perfect master are his own, because he is power itself. He has simply to will a thing and it is done. Be and it was. Kun faya kun refers, oh, repeat that. That's good.
Kun fayakun.
Thank you. Refers, according to the Sufis, to the divine manifestation of power. The yogi's powers, however, are not their own, and they have to depend on extraneous sources of power for working miracles. The inherent powers of perfect masters are continually overflowing, and yogis and pilgrims of the lower planes borrow these overflowing powers and work miracles with them. This is quite in consonance with the Sufi belief that walis are the Prophet Muhammad's witnesses, and that all their miracles, like drops oozing from a skin filled with honey, are derived from him. Endorsed by Orthodox Muslims, this belief is limited in scope, however, because it is applied only to the personality of the Prophet Muhammad. Its universal applicability is at once suggested, though, by the Sufi belief that from the beginning there has been only one Rasul, who appears from time to time in different countries under different names.
Thank you, Marian. Mahu, would you continue?
Yes. Illuminating this point still further, Meher Baba has explained in Fana Fillah, the Majzub state, there are no miracles, direct or indirect. In divine junction, Turiya Avasta or Maqam Frutat, the Jivan Mukta or azad mutlaq has no duty and performs no miracles. But there is always a possibility of miracles happening through the Jivan Mukta without his being aware of it. The agents or pilgrims of the lower planes very often borrow his powers and work miracles with them, but the powers of the Jivan Mukta are not in any way lessened thereby. Next, miracles of the Savior, Rasul or Avatar, and perfect masters or Sadgurus. When God becomes man, he becomes a savior, like Rasul or Avatar. And when man becomes God, he becomes a majzub. And if he has duty to perform to humanity, he traverses the second and third divine journeys and becomes a perfect master or Sadguru. Both the Savior and the perfect master are spiritually perfect because both are one with God. And although both have a duty towards humanity, that of the Savior is of a special kind. The Sufis say that the relationship or qurbat with God differs in the Savior and the perfect master, and they refer to them as qurbat farayiz or involuntary necessary nearness, and qurb nawafil, voluntary nearness, respectively. Qurb farayiz thus belongs to the saviors, and qurb nawafil to the perfect masters. The Sufis explain that in the working of miracles by the Rasul or the Avatar, God is the actor and man the instrument, while in a perfect master, it is the other way around. Man is the actor and God is the instrument. The famous incident of the Prophet Muhammad throwing a handful of dust at the enemy in the battle of Badr, in the battle of Badr, and thereby routing them is an example of a savior working a miracle. Although to all appearances, it was Muhammad as a man who threw the dust. In reality, it was God as Muhammad who threw the dust, and Muhammad as a man who routed the enemy. A miracle such as this is therefore an illustration of qurb farayiz. The miracles performed by perfect masters are, however, illustrations of qurb nawafil, of which the miracle of Shams Tabriz, that of raising the dead to life, is a good example. When Shams uttered the word Qum bi inshallah, arise in the name of God, the prince did not come to life. But when he said, Qum bi ixni, arise in my name, the prince at the once came to life. Here Shamsi Tabriz as man gave the order, and God as Shamsi Tabriz clothed himself with the attribute of himself, in this case with the attribute of life, and so restored the prince to life. In Qurb Nawafil, man is the actor and God the instrument. Let us for a moment discuss the difference in the attitude of East and West towards miracles. The East, which possesses a long record of familiarity with perfect masters and advanced souls, has come to accept that God, because he is infinite, cannot be comprehended by the finite mind. The East knows that human intellect, which is limited in scope, has its use only up to a certain stage in tackling metaphysical problems. A song by the philosopher Dr. Iqbal, عقل گو از تاج صدور نهیج آستی تقدیر می جویار نهیج. The translation is, intellect, though not far away from the threshold of the beloved, is not destined to enjoy the divine presence. The East thus knows that at the point where intellect gives up its efforts in grappling with that which is transcendental, love must take up the link. The West sets great store by the intellectual approach, and that which refuses to come within the orbit of intellect is apt to be either denied or scaffolded at. Or scoffed at. As a byproduct of this Occidental attitude, we may cite the utter misuse of the word mystic in current American idiom. The ardent religious enthusiasm of medieval Europe has been almost replaced by great enthusiasm for culture and science.
Thank you, Mahu. I'll just take a turn and finish up this supplement. The doctrines of science are, however, fluid to a certain extent, and the genuine scientist does look facts in the face. But Meher Baba has often declared that in spite of its great progress, science is yet far from the core of material things, and further from the outermost fringe of spiritual things. The heart must cooperate with the head.
Mm-hmm.
It may be that some of the purely physical feats of yogis, which pass for miracles with the multitude, can be explained away by medical science. But real miracles, particularly the miracles of perfect masters, do not admit of scientific explanation. Many of the miracles wrought by saviors, perfect masters, and saints are recorded in the spiritual legends and classics of all peoples and all religions. And the ever functioning spiritual hierarchy is daily adding to these miracles. The facts are there. Jesus and other perfect ones have raised the dead to life and have healed diseases. But even if one were to see a miracle take place before one's very eyes, and even if one were convinced that it was a miracle and not trickery, one would never be able to formulate a rational explanation of it. For miracles are utterly beyond the reach of intellectual explanation. They are a mystery as deep as life itself. Perhaps, however, the fault is not entirely without reason, for the world at large seldom gets an insight into the workings of perfect masters. And in truth, most of these workings lie treasured in the breasts of a few intimate associates and deserving initiates, and are safely hidden from curiosity. In the words of the famous Sufi Abdul Hassan Karkani, if a few drops of that which is under the skin of a perfect master should come forth between his lips, all the creatures of heaven and earth would fall into a panic. In spite of the mass appeal of miracles and of the claims of spiritual masters, the East, like the West, is also very circumspect in its attitude towards them. It may be said to its credit, however, that the East has learned by long experience not to deny the actions of the spiritual hierarchy, even if it cannot see its way to accept or believe in them. One of the earliest Sufis has declared, miracles are only one of the 1,000 stages on the way to God. And the avatar of this cycle, Meher Baba, affirms that the greatest miracle a perfect master can perform is to make another man spiritually perfect like himself. So next week we'll continue from here on page 215.
Oh.